Hello, fellow YouTubers. It has been probably like 2 months since I put out a video. Life has just been extremely hectic and busy, so I do apologize for not keeping up with my weekly predictions and reviews when it comes to the NFL picture. So, right now, I'm going to do a massive review of the end of the season and the postseason. As everyone knows, the Super Bowl is this Sunday. So, once I am done doing my full review, I'll make my predictions in the next video. So I'm going to be starting in the AFC with the top seeded Kansas City Chiefs. They finished they finished the season with a 14-3 record. It's hard to believe that they have been so dominant when it comes to this division. This is their sixth AFC West crown in a row. Ever since the Broncos won Super Bowl 50, they have dominated the AFC West, to say the least. The number 2 seed has the Buffalo Bills. Now, the funny thing with the Bills is their record was 13-3, and obviously there's a 17-game season. As everybody knows, obviously they had that game against the Bengals where they did not finish the game due to one of their players having a heart attack. Kudos to the medical staff and all the doctors and nurses that were able to basically revive this man and bring him back to life. So a huge props to them. So Buffalo, they got the division for the third straight season, and as I previously mentioned, they had the number 2 seed. The number 3 seed had the Cincinnati Bengals. As I previously mentioned, they were not able to complete a full 17-game season with the obviously incident that I had just previously mentioned. They finished the season 12-4, and they got their second straight AFC North crown. And I believe as long as they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're going to be a deadly 1-2 combo when it comes to the quarterback and wide receiver position. The fourth seed, which surprised myself, along with I'm sure the entire National Football League, had the Jacksonville Jaguars, who managed to go on a ridiculous run at the end of the season and a horrible collapse by the Titans, because I think they led that division for what seemed like forever. And then when it came to a do or die Week 18 game, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars managed to get into the postseason with a 9-8 record. This is their second postseason since the 2017-18 season when they had Blake Bortles and they went on a crazy run to the championship game. Unfortunately, they fell short. With Trevor Lawrence at the helm now, I truly believe he is going to be a threat going forward as a very good quarterback, and I can see the Jaguars even competing not just for a playoff spot in the future, but a division crown as well. I believe this season was absolutely no joke and a sign of good things to come for Jags fans. The first wild card spot went to the Los Angeles Chargers. They finished the season 10-7. I believe that they have a very good future, especially with Justin Herbert at the center. And I believe he's their franchise quarterback moving forward. They finished the season 10-7. Obviously, last year they had their hearts ripped out of their chest when they played the Raiders. I believe the game went into overtime, into like the last couple seconds. They kick a field goal, the Raiders make it in, and the Chargers are watching from home. So some redemption this season, to say the least, as they managed to get back into the postseason. The second wildcard team had the Baltimore Ravens, and we want to talk about a Jekyll and Hyde season. A team that looked like they were destined to not only make the playoffs, but maybe even compete for a division title. Unfortunately, it fell short as Jackson, for the second consecutive year, went down with injury or illness. I believe last year was the illness and injury as well. But he got injured for sure this season, had to have, I believe, season-ending surgery, if I'm not mistaken, on his foot, I do believe, or maybe it was his leg. But it had something to do with the lower body. They finished the season 10-7, making that they obviously made up for last year, but they missed the postseason because the last time they made the playoffs was in the 2020-2021 year, where they made it to the divisional round against the Bills and ultimately fell short of reaching their ultimate goal. And the last team to make it into the playoffs as the number 7 seed had the Miami Dolphins, and they finished the season 9-8. Despite making it into the playoffs, they sure stumbled down the gates. I do believe they lost like 4 in a row, I believe, in December, or maybe it was 3 in a row in December. But it was pretty bad, to say the least. But with that being said, they didn't have Tua for a lot of the season. He had, I believe, 3 concussions this year, if I'm not mistaken. And nowadays, concussions are taken so much more seriously than they were, say, 10, 15 years ago. Say if a player got hit in the head 10, 15 years ago, as I previously said, they most likely would have stayed in the game, probably taken some painkillers and just rubbed it off. But nowadays it is so serious because it can do like serious damage, not just now, but in the long run. Say like once he retires, there's been so many cases where concussions have affected people after their playing career. Heading to the NFC side of things, the Eagles are the number one seed for the second time in, I think it was 5 years, because the last time they made the playoffs and made a run was in the 2017-18 season when they went on an incredible journey to finish with a Super Bowl ring. So they finished the season as the best team in the league, 14-3. Jalen Hurts, as I've said many times, he is their future. Everything goes with him, and he's a dual threat quarterback too. So not only can he throw it, he can run it for 100 yards, honestly, if he really wanted to. The second seed went to the 49ers. And for a team that went through, I think, 3 quarterbacks, it's hard to believe that they were able to not only make the playoffs, but finish with a division crown, especially in that NFC West, when I thought that there were other teams that were just as competitive, if not more competitive than them, when the season first started. So they finished with a 13-4 record. This is their first division crown since, I can't even recall the last time they made the division. Maybe it was, no, I can't even recall. But obviously last year the Rams got the division. So the 49ers for the 2022-2023 managed to get the crown and obviously home field advantage. The third seed went to the NFC North with the Minnesota Vikings taking the crown. They finished the season 13-4. The last time they made the postseason, obviously, the last time they won the division was in the 2017-18 season, just like the Eagles. And they were pretty dominant back then. They had Case Keenum. He was like, I believe, their second string quarterback or third string quarterback after Bridgewater and Sam Darnold went down, I do believe. So they have all their faith and hope in Kirk Cousins. And obviously with the Vikings, they have a very dangerous threat on the outside when it comes to Justin Jefferson and the Dalvin Cook. I mean, very good and very dangerous combination of wide receiver and running back, in my opinion. And the fourth seed went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they had a season to forget. I mean, despite making it 2 consecutive years where they won the division, they stumbled into the playoffs. They had a below 500 record, 8-9, and they were so dominant last year, and obviously they were extremely dominant when they went to the Super Bowl just a couple seasons ago and won, but they have definitely fallen from grace, whether it's losing players, injuries, coaching changes. Obviously that may have played a factor, and obviously when you have a 45-year-old quarterback, definitely this year, among all the other years that I've seen Brady play, he definitely was showing his age, to say the least. But they finished, obviously, like I said, with a division crown. So for the Buccaneers, I'm sure you'll take that no matter what your record is. The first wild card team went to the Cowboys. And I got to say that they were definitely in the hunt for the NFC East title with the Eagles. They finished with a 12-5 record. It's crazy to think that maybe a game or two here or there really could have changed that whole outcome. Maybe they could have had a first-round bye, but obviously making the playoffs is a huge thing. And obviously when you have a guy like Dak, he's had flashes of brilliance, and obviously he's had flashes of but I mean, he is their starting quarterback and their franchise quarterback as we speak. The next wildcard team to make it in was their division rival, the New York Giants. They finished with a 9-7-1 record. A team that definitely showed that they were inconsistent for the last couple of seasons, and I didn't have a whole lot of hope with this season at all. But holy crumb, did they ever get out of the gates a hot streak. And obviously they kind of cooled off at the end, but just making it into the postseason for the first time since the 2016-17 season, I'm sure is huge for that team and their fan base. And the last wildcard team to make it into this year's playoffs had a team that I didn't see even coming close to making a playoff berth. I thought they would have been in a resurge, was the Seattle Seahawks. And under Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, I just believe that was a couple days ago. It's a huge thing for him. I mean, for a guy who was the number one pick, I believe, for the Jets, he sure has come a long way. Now he's on the NFC side of things. But he helped them get into the postseason. Obviously, after the Russell Wilson trade, I figured that Denver may have won that trade, but obviously the Seahawks did, because not only did they get rid of Wilson, but they managed to get Geno Smith to come back and have, obviously, like I said, a comeback player of the year. And then they have a bunch of draft picks from the Broncos too. So Seattle definitely won the trade by the end of the season, in my opinion, and they had a 9-8 record. So now what I'll do is I will review each of the wildcard games, the division games. Sorry, I'll review, yes, all the wildcard games, the division games, and the conference championship games as well. So the first one I will review, we will go back to the AFC side of things, had the Buffalo Bills taking on their division rivals in the Miami Dolphins. And as I mentioned before, the Dolphins made the postseason, but they didn't have Tua under center. I believe they started their third string quarterback and could have even been their fourth string quarterback. They had a lot of issues under center when it came to the Dolphins side of things. And even though the Bills won, it was a lot closer of a contest than I had imagined. So, as I said, the Bills moved on to the division round, while the Miami Dolphins were sent packing. The number 3 seed had yet another division game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. Now, had Lamar been healthy, I think that I probably would have given the edge, honestly, to the Ravens. But due to the fact that they were starting their backup quarterback, I knew they weren't going to win this game. It was close, which is amazing for the fact that they didn't have Lamar, but obviously they fell short, and the Bengals would move on. And the third matchup had, as again I said previously, a very surprising Jacksonville Jaguar team, but very good now, taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, I would have predicted, if I had made my prediction videos, I would 100% would have predicted that the Chargers would have won, and realistically, they should have. They had, I believe, a huge lead. If it was 24-0, maybe even been more than that. And the Jaguars managed to crawl back. Their defense kept them in the game, and obviously the Jags came out on top. So a huge victory for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and as I said, this team is going to be a threat moving forward. So going back to the NFC side of things, we had the number 2 San Francisco 49ers, and they were taking on the Seattle Seahawks, a divisional matchup in the wild card round. Kind of ironic. A close game, and the 49ers would prevail. They were just under Brock Purdy. He was just, I don't know, he was unbelievable. He didn't look like a rookie quarterback, and he sure didn't look like you think that the last player of the draft would be basically a bust or a nobody, but the fact that he was the last player selected in this past draft is just mind-blowing to see how he did. He went like he was undefeated going into the postseason. So obviously he got another victory under his belt in this key matchup here. So the San Francisco 49ers moved on to the divisional round, while the Seattle Seahawks, even though the season really wasn't a fail, they unfortunately fell short and were not able to move on. The Minnesota Vikings took on the New York Football Giants. And a game that a lot of people said would be close, and sure it was. The Giants put up quite a bit of a fight in their regular season matchup. Obviously, it came down to a last-second field goal where the Vikings would get the victory. But the Giants kept it close, and their defense, holy cow, did they ever keep them in it. As they got a huge, I don't really want to say it was an upset, because a lot of people, I think, picked the Giants to win because their matchup was so close, and the Vikings have been so inconsistent. Obviously, they haven't made the Super Bowl in a long time. They made a few conference championship appearances. Their last one was in the 2017-2018 season, but that's as close as they've come to trying to get back to their Super Bowl goals, if it's even possible. So the Giants would move on. This was their first victory in the postseason since their 2011-2012 run, where obviously they won the championship. And the last wild card game had, as I said previously, the struggling Buccaneers taking on the Dallas Cowboys. And in this matchup, the Cowboys were absolutely dominant. I thought that maybe if the Buccaneers could get a stop here and there, Brady and company could have a chance to come back. But unfortunately, Dallas built too big of a lead, and Brady was not able to overcome that. And for special teams, their kicker, to say the least, had a awful when it came to extra point attempts. I think it was over 4, and you can see the side reaction and the fact that that's probably, it's like that's one of those things is that you only have one job, and that's to kick this ball through these 2 posts. Now I'm sure it's a lot harder than it looks, but I think that was the first time in postseason history, if I'm not mistaken, that the kicker missed all the extra points. So it's not a real record you want to be proud of, but as I said previously, the Cowboys were able to get a huge win, and this was their first win against Tom Brady. So, and ultimately, everyone knows by now that Brady has once again retired, whether it stays that way or not. But you imagine having that if you're the Cowboys and you're a Cowboys fan, like your team successfully eliminated the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. So I mean that's a huge win to say the least. Now I'll move on to the divisional rounds, and the first one will go back to the AFC West, where it had the Kansas City Chiefs, and they take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the game was close, to say the least. It was a lot closer than I thought. But obviously, Mahomes, down the stretch, and obviously in these postseasons, he's shown that he can't be as versatile as he used to be. He used to be able to be a dual threat. He still is. But there's just something about that ankle or foot that can really affect a person and how they play moving forward. So the Chiefs got a close, gritty win, to say the least. But yeah, they went back to the championship game. I believe that was their fifth consecutive championship game in a row, which is just mind-blowing. As I've said at the start of the video, they are a team that's going to be a very big threat for many years to come. So the Chiefs moved on, and the Jaguars got sent home. And in the other AFC matchup, we had basically a rematch of what was supposed to be a Week 15 or Week 16 game, 17, somewhere around there, where it had the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Buffalo Bills. Now, a lot of people thought that the Buffalo Bills being home, that they could have been able to get a victory over the Bengals, but unfortunately it was not meant to be, as Joe Burrow and company really showed that they are going to be a threat for years to come, and they dominated the Bills. There's no question about it. So Buffalo, a heartbreaking loss. The Bengals, as expected, back to where they were just a season ago. Now getting on to the NFC side of things, we had the Philadelphia Eagles, and they played host to the NFC East rivals, the New York Football Giants. And when it comes to division games, you think some of them are going to be a lot closer than others. They're going to be gritty, etc. But unfortunately, the Giants, they just didn't show up, in my opinion. The Eagles absolutely were dominant. There were a few questions that whether the Eagles could be as dominant as they were all season, considering they struggled at the end, especially when Jalen Hurts got hurt, ironically. But yeah, they absolutely dominated their NFC East rivals, and the Eagles moved on to the championship game for the first time in 5 seasons. And the other playoff matchup in the NFC divisional round had the San Francisco 49ers, and they played host to the Dallas Cowboys. And as I said in the previous video when I had the San Francisco and Seattle video or recap, Brock Purdy just was unreal. And it's hard to believe that he's their third string quarterback. When you think of the San Francisco 49ers, you think of Jimmy G, and obviously you think of Trey Lance. But unfortunately, both those guys were injured. And it's basically always next man up mentality. Doesn't matter what sport you play, but that's pretty much what it is. When one guy goes down, you know you have to bring someone else. And they're not going to replace them or be perfect or just as good. But my gosh, has he proven that he should have been picked a lot higher. And I'm sure there are other teams that are quarterback needy that wish that they had taken a chance on this guy. So the San Francisco 49ers made their second straight appearance in the championship game. And unfortunately, the Dallas Cowboys were bounced in the divisional round for the second time since the 2018-19 season when they lost to the Los Angeles Rams. So going back to the AFC side of things with the championship game, a rematch of just one season ago, where the Kansas City Chiefs played host to the Cincinnati Bengals. And unfortunately for the Bengals, it was just not meant to be. There were some, you could say, questionable calls from the referees by either both sides or even one side. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to playing football. And if you're able to help your team score more points than the other, obviously that's a huge bonus. And it came down to a last-second field goal. A very tight game, to say the least, but as expected between these two teams, I wouldn't expect anything less. Came down to a last-second field goal, so the Chiefs are now making their third Super Bowl appearance in the last 4 years. It's hard to believe that they're this good, but my God, whoever does the drafting there, they should be getting the biggest raise of everyone if they haven't already. So the Chiefs are making the Super Bowl. Unfortunately for the Bengals, it was not meant to be a Cinderella story a season ago. Came crashing hard on this AFC Championship game. And then in the other AFC Championship game, we had the Philadelphia Eagles, and they were taking on the 49ers. And unfortunately for the 49ers, the injury bug caught up with them as Brock Purdy got hurt in the first half of the game, and their game was basically over. And I think they started Josh Johnson, who was the backup, and he did okay, but they just had too big of a deficit at that point to come back. The Eagles absolutely dominated the 49ers and are heading back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 5 years. So, despite having an amazing season for the 49ers, obviously it's very heartbreaking that it came to that you had a game like this where it was just absolutely one sided. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be. Eagles move on, and that is the end of my big recap. And as I said previously, in my next video, I will do a preview of Super Bowl 56, or maybe 57. I do apologize. Until next time, take care.